Hello, everybody. How are you? This is Damien Sneed, and you are here at Damien Sneed Dialogues. I'm super excited because this is not the first episode. This is not the second episode, but the third episode of Damien Sneed Dialogues. And tonight, we're going to be talking about navigating the music industry, branding, and networking. Tonight is very, very special for me because we have two phenomenal guests coming on. And I'm actually going to do something a little different this time. I'm going to bring them both on first, and then I will introduce them while they are in front of the camera. First, we have coming to us, Stanley Brown. Hello, Stanley. Welcome.
Hey, Dane. What's up, man?
Yes. And before I introduce Stanley, I'd like to bring our next guest on, and that is Gwendolyn Quinn. Hello, Gwen.
Hi.
So I'm going to introduce Stanley and Gwen now. Stanley Brown is a musician, a writer, an executive producer. He's been a record label executive doing A&R. He's a Grammy Award winner. He is an artist, a producer, a musician that's worked with artists such as, I can't even begin to list them all, Snoop Dogg. He's worked with BET, Sunday Best as music director for season 3. He's also worked with Drew Hill. He's also worked with Run DMC. He's also worked with Melanie Fiona, the artist Joe, Karen Clark Sheard, India Ree, LL Cool J, Island Records, RCA Records, E1, T, Motown, and much more. And then we also have here Gwendolyn Quinn, who is known as a celebrity publicist, a media strategist, a writer, a producer. She's worked with Arista Records, Clive Davis, Whitney Houston, Luther Vandross, Aretha Franklin, Karen Clark Sheard, Shaka Khan, Ava DuVernay, BET, Wynton Marsalis, Motown Records, Camille Thurman, and so many, many more. So will you all help me in welcoming Stanley Brown and Gwendolyn Quinn?
Hi.
What I'd like to say about tonight's panel is this group of people, they are absolutely amazing because they both happen to be like family to me. These two people are very special to me because they are people who are like lifelines. I know my mentor, Wynton Marsalis, always talks about making sure that you have family connected to you. Family doesn't just have to be your blood, but it can be people that you know you can always call on when you need something. Whenever I need a question about anything music industry or life, I can call Stanley, I can call Gwen. Both of them are like my older siblings. Stanley's like my older brother, my big brother, and Gwen is like my older sister, my big sister. I have to say, too, that these two people have been very selfless in sharing their contacts, in sharing the networking that they have forged on their own accord. And they've always been people to open doors for me. I would not have been the music director at Sunday Best at BET if Stanley Brown had not asked me to go to that network and to that platform and work with him. And I'll always be grateful. And I also will remember when my father died and my mother was diagnosed with dementia. I was in a very dark place. I was trying to complete school in New York. And it was Stanley Brown who actually offered me a job to work at the Greater Allen Cathedral AME Church. And it was an answer to prayer. I remember when he offered the job, I couldn't accept it at first because I was like, this is impossible. I remember he drove me back to Harlem. He's a great man. He's a family man. He's also over the music department at the Greater Allen AME Cathedral. Again, I can't say enough about Stanley Brown. And then Gwendolyn, very instrumental to me after my time on Sunday Best when she was working with Matthew Knowles and BET, working with the artists. I was actually, Stanley called and said, hey, they're going to have Leandria Johnson and some of the winners at TBN. And that's where I met Gwen backstage. And from that point on, we began working together with Wynton Marsalis and the Abyssinian Mass. And she was instrumental. Two things about her personally for me. She was instrumental in me meeting Aretha Franklin and getting to work with Aretha Franklin. And then on top of that, I was sharing about Stanley Brown being such a blessing to me when my father died. And when I didn't have a way to continue paying over, thousands of dollars a month for someone to be a caretaker and watch my mother because of her condition, having the condition of advanced dementia, Stanley is the person that God used to create that lifeline and that stream of income for me. And it opened up so many more doors. And Gwendolyn Quinn, what I found out after we started working together, she said, "Oh, we'll talk about it later, but my family's from Augusta." I remember going home to Augusta with my aunt and my uncle, who are watching now in Georgia. And they said, "So tell us about this publicist." So I called her and said, "So who's your family that's from Augusta?" She gave her grandmother's name. I said, "That sounds familiar. Fannie Bradshaw." And my aunt and uncle began crying immediately. They said, "Go back to your mother's bedroom." My mother was in the hospital bed at home on hospice. And they said, "Just grab your mother's hand and we'll walk back there with you and tell you more about Fannie Bradshaw." And what they told me is that Gwendolyn's grandmother, Fannie Bradshaw, and my grandmother, my maternal grandmother, Janie Hampton, were best friends. And the reason that my aunt and uncle wanted me to go back to the hospital bed is they said, "Your mother always had a favorite dress out of her entire time growing up as a young woman, young girl in Augusta, Georgia. And her favorite dress was her prom dress that was made by Fannie Bradshaw." So these two people that I'm introducing to you are legends. They are moguls in the industry, but they are regular people and they have phenomenal, sterling hearts. And for me, they have definitely been major, major door openers, people who have forged avenues for me and knocked down walls that I would not be where I am today if it was not for these two people. And we're going to ask them some questions now. And surprisingly, they knew each other as well. But I wanted to take the time tonight just to tell both of you, thank you. I appreciate you. These are two people that I will always have the utmost respect for. And they also are really, really family to me. So again, everybody, tonight is going to be a phenomenal session because we have these two major, major, brilliant geniuses on the episode. Okay, so let's get started. First question, and we'll go to you, Stanley. What was your first experience working in the music industry? Or what artist, label, project was it? What was your first entree into the music industry personally?
Well, my first introduction into the music industry was through hip hop. Actually, I was a keyboard player, session player for the producers who locally who lived in my area, the local producers. There was a guy named Howie T, who was producing artist, a hip hop artist, a hip hop icon named Chub Rock at that time. And I was in the studio. He would have me play parts and play on the record. And come to find out that this song would later become one of the greatest records in hip hop. The song was entitled "Treat 'Em Right" by Chub Rock. I played the keyboard lines on that. And because of that, Damien, I was able to meet other hip hop producers. And then I met Run DMC. And then Jason Mizell, who we know as Jam Master Jay, the music child for Run DMC, the brainchild musically for Run DMC. He took me under his wings and taught me how to produce. And from working with Jam Master Jay, I got introduced to Herbie Lovebug, and then I started writing music and working on arrangements with Herbie Lovebug and Salt from Salt and Pepper. They gave me an opportunity to work on their projects and Kid and Play albums, House Party. I started doing soundtracks, and then it went on and on and on and from there. But my first introduction to music or an artist was through hip hop, honestly.
Amazing. And I'm going to ask the same question to Gwendolyn Quinn. So Gwen, I'll ask you the same question. What was your first experience working in the music industry? What artist or label or what project was that? What was your role?
My first introduction to the record industry was Gloria Gaynor. At the time, before I was in the record industry, I used to do hair. And I worked for Vidal Sassoon Hair Salon in New York City. And she called me to do her hair. I was braiding hair actually at that time. And then I braided her hair and she loved it. And she had an assistant that would go on the road with her. She traveled a lot internationally. So she called me one day to see if I was available to travel to South America. I had never gone to South America. I had never been out of the country. I did not have my passport. So yeah, that was my first introduction. I went to Spain. I went to Europe with her, and that was my actual first introduction. My first label job was at Mercury Records. Yeah, I worked for Ed Eckstein at Mercury Records, and we worked with Tony, John Lucien, Olita Adams, Vanessa Williams, Brian McKnight. That was actually my very first project.
Absolutely amazing. And the next question, we'll take this from both of you. We'll go to you, Stanley. What are one or two of the defining moments of your career in the music industry? As I just described, when I think of you, two of the defining moments, there's so many, were that moment, in the office at Greater Allen when you told me you wanted to offer me a position there. That's just it per se in our relationship. And another defining moment was when you called me with the opportunity to be on Sunday Best to work with you. But for you, what are one or two of the defining moments of your entire life or your entire career? I know you have had so many defining moments.
Well, beyond records and producing and having jobs at record companies, I would say my defining moment, Damien, was sitting in an audience at a celebration of life for one of my mentors, Butch Lewis. Stevie Wonder was the guest, and he decided he wanted to do the Lord's Prayer, but he wanted to sing and play the harmonica. So he's asking, he gets on the mic and he says, is there anyone here who can play piano and can play the Lord's Prayer? So I'm looking around the audience because I'm like, somebody has to be able to play the Lord's Prayer here, because I'm sure not going to get up there and play with Stevie, right? So after a while, Denzel Washington, Bob Johnson, Miss Kathy Hughes, they were all in the audience and they were yelling, Stanley can play, Stanley can play. So Stevie Wonder called me up on the stage, Damien, and allowed me to assist him in playing the Lord's Prayer. And then after he finished the Lord's Prayer, he decided to go into all his catalog and he started singing all his songs. And to me, that was the defining moment. That was the greatest moment in my life. After that moment, I felt like I could just retire and I didn't have to do anything else again.
Absolutely amazing. And Gwen, what was one of your defining moments, or one or two of your defining moments?
I remember that, Stanley. It hit all the New York papers, right? I remember that. One of my most defining, I have two. Well, I have several, but I have two. One is working at Arista Records with Clive Davis. And the other defining moment was, and Damien, you was there to share that moment with me, accepting the Pulitzer Prize in her honor with Clive Davis after she passed. That was huge. To accept that award with Clive Davis, it was just, I still pinch myself about that. But I think those are the two most defining moments.
Amazing. Amazing. So we're talking about the theme, navigating the music industry, branding, and networking. So a lot of people are tuned in, a lot of people are watching, and they want to know from both of you this question: how does one break into the music industry, no matter if they're a performing artist, a producer, a hairstylist, makeup artist, a publicist, an assistant, a personal assistant, a potential industry executive, etc.? How does one break into the music industry? Either one of you can answer that. Who wants to go first?
I'll go first. But to be honest, Damien, and Gwen might agree with me, I think there's one answer to that question, how you break into the industry. Because for me, I was at the right place at the right time. Like I told you, I did the Chubb record. I met a gentleman named Dr. Freeze, who was producing a song for a movie soundtrack called New Jack City at the time, and he was producing a song called I Want to Sex You Up for a group called Color Me Bad. So I'm in the studio playing keyboard parts and blah, whatever I'm doing. his manager was Hiram Hicks at the time. Hiram was watching me work on this music with his producers, and Hiram took a liking to me and said, "Hey man, are you a writer or are you a producer?" I said, "Nah, man, I'm not a writer or a producer. I just play keyboards." He said, "Nah, man, you're a producer, man. You need it's bigger than that, Stan. It's bigger than that." So he said, go. He gave me studio time. He gave me a little budget to go in the studio, Damien, and to come up with a song. So I called my friend Josiah Mark Middleton, who's the lead singer on Folk Street, because he was a guy working with me at my church. And I went in the studio and I wrote "Dreaming."
Wow.
And so I took the song back to Hiram. He said, "Nah, man, this is a smash. We could do something with this." He then took the song to Cassandra Mills and Lou Salas and Benny Medina and all those guys that won at the time. Giant Records it was at the time, I believe. And Dreaming ended up being given to Christopher Williams. And from that moment, Damien, that's what launched my career as a producer. But I would say I just happened to be at the right place at the right time.
Amazing. And Gwen, what about you? What would you say is the way that one can break into the music industry?
Well, certainly being at the right place at the right time. But when I was coming up, there was always conferences and events that you can go to, and you can meet these people. I would go to all the music conferences, BRE, Jack the Rapper, all of that were out at that time. And that's how I met everyone. That's really how I met everyone. I mean, it first started for me when I went to go do Gloria Gaynor's hair. That was the start. But of course, I mean, I just wouldn't let up after that. I went everywhere. And I think today, because we have social media and, we have less conferences now than we did before, you just have to get out there and meet people. You really have to get out there and meet people because this is a friendly community.
But Gwen, do you remember the times when if they knew you worked in the industry, you couldn't leave the building without people standing outside giving you tapes?
Oh yeah, I definitely would always recommend that to someone like you, Stanley, because A&R was not my thing, and I made sure I didn't take not one tape home. No, but I mean, that was how I met people. I mean, I went to all of the conferences. And then of course now, people should, make a point to going to all the award shows. That's another great way to meet people. Just, just go and dive in your community, wherever that is, that's what you have to do.
So, everybody wants to be an artist. Everybody wants to break into the industry. They all want big bucks. They want the platforms. But this question is very key. Gwen, you and I have talked about this a lot, as Gwendolyn Quinn is my publicist. But Stanley, we've talked about this for years, about this next topic. How important is branding for someone pursuing a successful career in the music industry? A lot of times people can have the talent. They can be in the right place at the right time. They can have the right product. They can be in the right timing, but their branding, the presentation is not up to par. What would you all say about that? How important is branding? And what about the people that could have the opportunity, but they're passed over because they don't have the branding?
Well, I think first artists need to just focus on their craft. That's how you even develop a brand. You have to be great. You have to be proficient. You have to be, one of the best musicians out there, one of the best singers out there. I think that's the first thing that people should do. And everything else will kind of come together. Once you have a team and you're with a label, or just maybe your team, your publicist, your manager, they can help you pull all of that together. But I think people are so concerned with that and not concerned with the artistry. It starts there. Can you sing? Do you need to take lessons? Do you know how to read music? You have to really drill down on all of that. And especially now, if you want to have a lasting career in this business, it's not enough to just come out of the church and sing anymore. You really have to learn how to read music, write music, study. Those are the artists that's going to be around for a very, very long time. I hope I answered the question.
Oh, you did. Stanley, would you like to speak to that?
Yeah, I think what she said is 100% true. I think the concern is you should worry about just being great at what you do, not just good, great. Because when you look at singers, Damien, and you know this better than I do, especially coming from a church background where the church community breeds singers, everybody could sing. But you know, you have to have that thing want to separate you from what everybody else is doing. You have to have that it factor too. And I think that's a part of branding, and you know, and as well. Like you have to walk in a room and matter, you know. And then when you get a chance to perform or get on the stage, like you have to be felt. Oftentimes when we travel, Damien, when we want good food, we're asking somebody who lives there, man, where is the best food? Where can I get some soul food? And a lot of times it's not the big marquee place. It's a little place in the hood or somewhere in the back road where, you know, it's just real. And what will stick and last forever is when something is real, you know, not fabricated, not it looks like something else or sounds like something else, like when it's your true, authentic self.
Most definitely. Most definitely. The next question I'd like to ask is...
Oh, and I agree with Stanley, because I think with a lot of artists today, they're trying too hard to be something else instead of, you know, really figuring out who they are and their own identity. And I think that's, you know, we don't need any more Beyoncés. We don't need any more, you know, some of these other artists out here. We just need one of each. And I think that's how a lot of artists pattern themselves behind other artists. You know?
I agree.
That perfectly leads to my next question. My next question is, what things should someone not do? And basically, what are some of the pitfalls of those wanting to successfully navigate the music industry? For example, a lot of people don't realize that the music industry is extremely small. And when you mess up over here, it can travel to the other coast, it can travel to London. The world is very, very small. You know, Gwen, we've seen that happen a lot in situations where people have burnt bridges and then they show up somewhere else in another region of the country, another state, and they expect to just be added to the program or put on, and it doesn't work like that. And then Stanley, you and I have discussed that as well, where people won't listen to those that are trying to help them, trying to help groom them and prepare them for certain stages, certain rooms. And then they try to keep going at it another way, but they still have to learn a lesson. Again, you know, it's like trying to eat a cake and it's not baked, you know, or trying to, you know, eat fried chicken and you haven't even seasoned the meat yet. You know, it's still frozen on the inside. But what are some of the pitfalls that you may have seen, things that can help the viewers to let them know the things they should not do or they should avoid doing in trying to brand themselves, trying to network? And sometimes it could be just being a little too abrasive and too forward in trying to forcefully make somebody hear your project, or, you know, every time you're around, they're just playing on the cell phone or playing on the iPad. Sometimes that works in the right moment, but, you know, sometimes people can be annoying.
No, yeah. You know, Damien, I think one thing that I find that artists lack today is the discipline.
Yeah.
I think if you had discipline, you can avoid a lot of that. Yeah, so I think that's one of the things that I think artists should just work on, being disciplined. Some of them just don't have no discipline. And when you don't have any discipline, you're just like all over the place doing all kinds of things. So, but certainly, you know, the basic things, being on time, being professional, not gossiping, running your mouth, you know, doing your best, looking great, you know, being kind, being friendly, being professional. Those are the very basic things that you should do when you are working for someone, whether it's a background singer, musician, etc.
Definitely.
Stanley?
I agree. I worked, like I said, for a gentleman named Butch Lewis, and I had the privilege of sitting around dinner tables with Butch and Mr. Lewis and Bob Johnson and some of the great minds, right, and mentors. One day, Butch Lewis said to me, he said, "You're not in the music business." I said, "What do you mean, sir? I am in the music business." He said, "No, you're in the people business, right? People keep you in the music business, which means relationships are important." Damien, what I'm learning is that the intern today could very well be the president 10 years from now. So as Gwen said, you want to treat people right, because you never know where people will end up in any industry. Whatever your industry is, like you said, you can be a jerk to someone. You go across the country, go across the world that you was, a jerk to, has the ability or the power to give you the yes that you need. So I would say to this generation, as great as you are, beyond the talent, it's always a plus just to be nice and just to be kind, because you never know who's going to be in position later on 10 years from now to open that door for you.
Most definitely. And speaking of that, Stanley, I sort of mentioned some of the things that you've done. It's interesting because I think the way that we met, I used to hear about you all the time, especially when I was living in DC, a student at Howard University in Baltimore, the great Stanley Brown, and hearing about, you playing at many churches in Brooklyn, but also crossing over in the industry. But Karen Clark Sheard is like another family member to me. I had a chance to be her music director. She was the first artist I ever played for when I went to DC to Howard University my freshman year. But what's interesting, you actually were responsible for her breaking into, not totally responsible. We know that, God had a lot to do with it. God was definitely the source, and there were other people involved, but you had a very definitive hand in her first recording when she went solo from the Clark sisters. And I want you to talk a little bit about that and that experience. I know Donald Lawrence was there, phenomenal producer, writer, musician. And also what's interesting, we were talking about burning bridges. You actually worked with Gwendolyn Quinn at that label, Island Records. So you all have known each other for a number of years. And It's very interesting because Gwendolyn Quinn has worked as Karen Clark Sheard's music director worked as her publicist for a number of years. And you've performed with Karen many times. And then I was working with Karen as music director. That's what brought me to Greater Allen AME. And I think you and your wife saw me years before that at a Sister to Sister concert. So there are all of these connections, and then even when I went to Sunday Best, they just so happened to have Karen come to and Kiara come to the show. So it's like all these connections, all these circles that keep connecting. So can you and Gwen talk about what it was like for you all working in the industry? And that's not the only place you all have worked together. You all worked together, Island Records, BT Sunday Best, the BMI Trailblazers Luncheon. I mean, I could go on and on. So talk about that, and then we'll let Gwen talk about what it was like when you all first worked together.
Okay, now that would be my second defining moment. Like that would be considered one of my one out of two defining moments. Signing Karen Clark Sheard. We were doing a movie soundtrack called "Don't Be a Menace in the Hood" or something like that, by drinking your juice or something. It was the Wayne Brothers movie. It was crazy, and it was amazing because I was like, we're gonna put a gospel record on this particular soundtrack, and it worked. And during the taping of the video, we had Kirk Franklin, Hezekiah Walker, Donald Lawrence, and Karen Clark Sheard. We call it the Island All Stars. And at that moment, making that video, me and Donald kind of got together, and we was like, man, maybe we can get Hiram to sign Karen. And so we kind of convinced him to allow us to take on the Karen Clark project. And I remember going to Detroit to talk to Pastor Drew Sheard. At the time, I was scared to death. I was like, sir, I would like to sign your wife to Island Records. And he just kind of gave me that look like, boy, if you mess this up, you know what I'm saying? So he actually gave me a chance, and he trusted me with Karen's solo project, debut project, and he just trusted me to do that. And and it became the blueprint because you had Donald Lawrence, who was the mastermind, just doing, you know, I don't do anything without Donald, but then you had Donald, and then you had the Gwendolyn Quinns. I mean, then you had the Varnell. We had the Golden State Warriors or the Chicago Bulls when Michael Jordan was playing at the time. We had an all-star crew. And
you had Moss. You had Kelly Price, Faith Evans on that project.
Everybody was on that record, Damien. And to me, that is probably my biggest and my most proud, my proudest moment in my history of production. Signing Karen Clark, being the A&R over that project, and the executive producer for that project, to me, was one of my defining moments. But Damien, we had such a team. We had a Gwen who was like, okay, once y'all finish with that music, now she got to go convince the world that it's great. You know what I mean? And evidently, to this day, it's her biggest record. So that means Gwen did a hell of a job.
Right. Yeah, you know that album changed the industry. Yes. That album came out, I remember there was a guy named Al Islar who was out of DC, and he was traveling with Karen Clark Sheard. I was there when she did her promo tour. I was there for one of the dates in Cincinnati. But I remember that was one of the first gospel projects that was half studio and half live. I mean, it was absolutely phenomenal. Gwen, and the fact that you worked with Drew Hill, you know, all these people. So Gwen, what was it like that you and Stanley knew each other years ago at Island Records?
On now, it says my mic is mute. Okay. No, Stanley was like the golden child at Island Records. Everybody else used to be in trouble all the time. I was constantly in trouble. Let me just start there. But Stanley couldn't do any wrong. So no, I remember that time. We had a really great team. We had hit records like right out the door. I mean, we had the Isley Brothers Project, which, you know, Ron Isley and Ernie Isley had been away for a while. They came out with their comeback project. It was amazing. Drew Hill, we broke Drew Hill. We had Karen Clark Sheard and just some other developing artists. And it was a great time. But, you know, Karen is just amazing. I mean, she's just amazing. I think I learned more about Karen Clark Sheard, not so much from Island, but from Aretha.
Mm-hmm.
Aretha Franklin, she talked about Karen all the time. Karen and her daughter Kiki, she called her. And yeah, I love Karen. I'm excited about working with her on this upcoming tour that we're going to do with Damien and Karen Clark Sheard, Aretha Franklin upcoming tour. She's just a sweetheart. She's just an amazing. Oh, Stanley, you didn't know that. I'm sorry.
I didn't know that.
Nobody knew that.
Nobody knew that. Okay.
Yeah, I've been
kidding on it. It's out there now. But Karen is just, she's just a great lady. She just really is a great lady. I just love everything about her and her voice. There is no one out there that sings like Karen Clark Sheard. She's just amazing. It's just a sweetheart.
Yes.
Just, I mean, you know, you don't even have to work for Karen. She's one of those artists that if you're not working with her, you'll still try to do anything you can to move her career along. I always recommend her for things. Yeah, I love Karen Clark Sheard.
This is perfect because we transition to the next question, the next two questions. So I'm going to two parts of this, but I'll start with the first one. How important is loyalty to you? For me, loyalty is everything. I know I mentioned a lot, but being adopted, I've always valued family. I've always valued real friends. And sometimes when loyalty is involved, of course you have value, you have worth. But sometimes, Stanley, when you call me for something, I never mention a price tag to you. Because first of all, I could never pay you back for some of the doors that you've opened. You know, God opens the doors, but God uses people. And then on top of that, you know, sometimes people should give people a finder's fee, but people don't give people a finder's fee. But for me, it's like family. There are times that you give me opportunities and there's money involved in it, but some doors, some platforms, money doesn't, the residuals goes on and on for life and life. You know, I wouldn't do that for everybody. Same thing. Gwen can ask me to do something. If there was someone else, I wouldn't do it, but because it's Gwen and she's pushed down walls for me and knocked down walls and created my brand so people could understand that I'm a multi-genre artist. There's certain things that I'll do for Gwen that there's not a price tag on it. And it's the same way. You know, Stanley, there are things, if I call you to do it, sometimes you just show up, you know, and if there is money, you're like, oh, I'm not even looking for it. And there are times that you said, no, Dame, I won't take the money. Same thing with you, Gwen. There are times you've done something, you said, I'm just going to do this. Can we talk about loyalty in the industry? Now, I'll move to the second side about the importance of being paid. But right now, can we just talk about, or can I hear from you all about loyalty and what that means to you in the industry?
Gwen?
It's everything. You know, I have fallen out with folks. I'll just be honest. When I thought they were loyal and they were not loyal, I was done. You know, yeah, loyalty is everything. You know, it's everything. That's it for me. It's everything.
Stanley?
I agree. Loyalty is you can't pay for loyalty. I mean, you just can't buy it. There's some people that I am, until I leave this planet, I'm gonna always be indebted to. You know, if Jam Master Jay was here, you know, I would be. I'm never going to be on a platform and not mention Herbie Lovebug or Hiram Hicks, Russell Simmons, people who gave me opportunities, Leo Cohen, like those guys who gave me jobs, and Kedar Massenberg, you know, Jazzy Jordan. You know, I can go on and on. But I will say, Damien, a thank you goes a long way. Because, Gwen, as you know it, we are in a thankless business. And you can do everything for people. And sometimes, Damien, there's not even a thank you in return. And I have to say that there's some people that I've helped along the way that till this day right now are calling and giving me opportunities, such as like your Rodney Jerkins, you know what I mean? Who every day we're on the phone. And if I needed a situation right now, I can make a phone call. Steven Morales in Miami, you know, little guys who's a big producer in the Latin community. You know, people who I pulled up when they were trying to be somebody, and I didn't shun them. I gave up, you know, I shared whatever it is that I had, and now they are doing the same thing for me and just, you know, opening the doors for me. So loyalty is everything.
And Damien, I have clients that, you know, former clients that I still get calls like from the press. I guess sometimes they think, I guess some people, you know, negotiate for their other new clients. You know, I get calls when I work with Queen Latifah, when Aretha, Shaka, just any of them. And they want me to like spill the beans, or they try to call me for information. And never, ever would I do that, ever. Never, ever. And I'm just amazed, like some of these artists I haven't worked for in years and I still get calls. You know, can you share with me, blah, 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 blah. And I would never do that because they've been very, very good to me throughout the years. And it is not who I am mainly. But yeah, I guess people do that. I don't get it. I really don't get it.
So on the flip side, for people coming up in the industry, or you're a record label executive, you know, there's a point where you get to where you understand and realize that you have a value, and your value has a price. There's a fee. You're not a novice. You're not someone who's been interning forever. You know, you actually have worth and value. This question, I would love to hear from both of you as veterans in the industry. When do you start asking people for what you're owed, or when do you ask them for a fee, and how do you do that? And because, you know, sometimes you do help people that are friends, that are family, and you give, and, you know, maybe for certain people that are family that you've been loyal to, there's just that working relationship where money is not the only thing that you do to remunerate, you know, the value of your gift, your time, your talent, your efforts. But how do you speak to being able to say, I'd be glad to do it, I'm honored that you asked me, but this is my fee, or what is the fee, or what is your budget? How do you deal with that? That's a very important topic.
When I don't get it as much. I think I don't know. I give a lot. I definitely give a lot, and I definitely do a lot of favors. I still do that to this day. Early in my career, I used to always undercut myself. You know, if I should have charged maybe 5,000, I would charge $3,500. I did that a lot. Um, but I don't do that as much, and I'm not approaching that way anymore. I mean, I think people know me well enough to know if they should come to me and ask for a favor. I certainly don't mind doing favors, and normally people don't have to ask me for a favor. If I see they need something, I just normally try to provide. You know, that's normally how I operate. But you know, sometimes it's important to negotiate. Yeah, sometimes it's important to negotiate down your fee for certain people in certain situations. Everybody doesn't have it, you know, especially when you're working with independent artists, opposed to a record company that can pay you a lot more than maybe an independent artist. So you just have to be flexible. You have to be flexible, and you know when I know when to bend and to give in a little. I'm not that hard line about money like that. That's not the main issue. I mean, although I, you know, certainly want to be paid.
Well, Stanley, before you speak on this, Stanley, I can say personally, there are musicians that I've approached about traveling with me, performing with me, doing gigs with me. I know I'm different from the South. I know that, you know, for me, I've never, even at a church, I've never told a church, this is how much I have to be paid. And if you don't pay me this, I'm going to leave and do that. Nothing against other people. That's them. That's just the way that I've been. And Stanley, you're another person. You've been blessed where you've had multiple streams of income. You haven't had to rely just on one stream, you know, to be able to have sustenance. But I'll be honest, this is Damien. I've actually told some people, you know, thank you, but no thanks, because I've offered them opportunities that they did not have. Wow, this is a strong thing to say, but it's the truth. I've offered them opportunities. They didn't qualify for the opportunity, but I saw something special in them. And before I could even give them the details, not only did they ask, how much is it paying? They said, I have to have this. I need this. I need this. I need this. And I'm just like, wow, this is somewhat ungrateful for someone who doesn't really have much of a resume or much experience. And I didn't badmouth them to other people. I still greet them, but I said, I don't want that type of energy or that type of spirit around me. Sometimes people have been hurt, you know, so they're always gimme, gimme, gimme. But have you ever had that experience, or what do you have, or what could you say to that, or to when to charge money, or when to ask for a fee, or the opposite, like I said, about people that you've offered opportunities to? I'm sure it's happened to you before too. And they box themselves out because they're, you know, so what's the word? Puffed up that they feel like they deserve this and they deserve that. Not realizing, Stanley, a lot of the stuff that you and I have done, you as well, Gwen, we didn't get paid for it. We just showed up. But yeah, I'll let you talk to that.
Yeah, the problem, you know, and I'm going to be transparent, because I'm guilty to a fault when it comes to managing finances and charging. I've just never charged. I just never knew how to negotiate. But the reality is, Damien, I've been blessed too, where I've never had to negotiate. When I get the phone calls, people understood my value and what I was going to bring to the table, and they were fair. Like for instance, I had an account for the last 6-7 years with BMI through Catherine Bruton, right? Never one time did I have to negotiate a price. And to be honest, if I had negotiated a price, I probably would have underbid myself, because she was always going to give me more than I probably was going to ask for. Because they appreciated the value and the work ethic that was going to be attached to the assignment. So I never really had an issue with money. And in regards to turning things down, at this point in my life, and I'm sure, Gwen, you feel the same way, if I don't want to do it, I just don't do it. If I don't want to go, I don't go. If I don't want to be involved, I don't be involved. And it's not that I have, you know, I'm sitting on millions of dollars, because that's not the case at all. I just value my time, and I value me. And I understand now the power of saying no to things that don't matter. You know, because people will be calling you every day. Damien, can you come and play on a record? Can you come and do this? And, you know, and at the end of the day, it's really of no value. So I don't waste. I no longer, what's the scripture? Give pearls to the
swine. Don't cast your pearls to the swine.
I don't, no, not at all. I'm not casting anything these days.
Got it. Gwen, you were going to say something?
Yes. The other thing too is that, you know, you just have to always just give from your heart if you're going to give, you know, because you don't always reap where you sow. I learned that a long time ago. Sometimes people do things because they expect things in return. You can't go in that spirit. You know, you just have to give because you want to give. Then that way you won't be disappointed about anything. But most times you're going to reap it somewhere else. You don't always reap where you know what I mean? So that's sort of how I operate normally now. Because I know at some point I'm going to get it back. Maybe not from the person I just gave it to, but it'll be another situation. So
you know what? And that's brilliant because I promise you, I say that all the time to younger musicians. And it's funny you said that because I've never heard anyone else say that. And I used to always use that phrase. You don't always reap where you sow, you reap because you sow. And that's what Gwen is saying. Just sow, and it might come back somewhere else. Somebody down the line might bless you for something you sowed in somebody else's life. I live by those principles.
So I'm just curious if you all are transparent to say it. Have you all ever seen in your years in the industry, have you seen artists get blocked out? Not where a person per se put them on a list, but have you seen them miss a huge opportunity because their assistant or their manager quoted $150,000 when they could have actually gotten $300,000, or they said we need grapes and we need purple M&Ms and pink wrappers and on the peppermints, and we need the fried chicken at this degree. Stanley's laughing because there's some writers that are actually like that. And the fried chicken has to have hot sauce, but it's got to be Tabasco. We don't do Texas Pete. Have you all ever seen that happen? And then people don't get called. Maybe they get called for that opportunity, but there's something else that's big, and people don't want to work with them because sometimes they're a little too bombastic. Have you all ever experienced that without saying the name of the artist or the group or the industry executive?
All the time. Self-sabotaging is real, and we self-sabotage a lot. I've done it myself in my own career. So and people do it so much sometimes that they're not even aware of it. And then you have people that work for you, managers, agents. You never really know what they're doing sometimes when they're talking to people and how they're, over negotiating, because they're not really thinking about your career long term. They're just thinking about the dollar amount. Agents have a tendency to do that a lot because they're not really vested. They're vested in your career to the point that they know that they can make money from you on the concert circuit, but they're not vested overall in your career. So sometimes when they quote prices, they don't really, they're not flexible at all. But I see it all the time. Self-sabotaging, that is something. It's real. Like I said, I've done it enough in my own career. So, we do that a lot to ourselves sometimes, unfortunately.
So I'd like to ask this question. Where do you all see the music industry going in the next few years post COVID-19? Can you speak to some specific things that maybe have already changed, or things that are about to change? Because, some people are still thinking they need to print out 1,000 CDs and put them in the mail and mail them to the radio stations. And, they feel like they need to do the same thing. And the industry has really changed a lot. But where do you see these changes moving towards, and what are you already doing, or what things are you seeing being implemented in the work that you're doing now during this COVID-19 global pandemic?
Stanley, you want me to start?
Yes.
Well, for me, I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to do next, because I think the next 2 years is going to be rough for recording artists. especially on the concert circuit. I think that artists are going to have a difficult time touring, especially jazz artists and gospel artists. I mean, pretty much everyone. The artists, the big name artists that perform in the big arenas, they're going to have a difficult time until they get a vaccine or some kind of medication for this virus. I think the artists, like the jazz artist that performs in the jazz clubs that, you know, very tight space, you know, 300, 400, 500 people, that's going to be very difficult to manage long term. And the gospel artists that primarily, you know, minister and sing at the church. I mean, that's their main venue. You know, I find it's going to be very difficult for them over the next 2 years. I'm really concerned about that. And I think that the digital outlets, the Netflix, the Apples, and all of those outlets are going to try to probably make deals to do more concerts with these artists because they're not going to be able to travel and tour as much. And it's just going to be very different. I think it's going to be very different in that regard. And unfortunately, that's how 95% of artists make most of their money is when they tour. So, yeah, I'm really interested. I'm looking at that. I'm looking at the Broadway community. I'm looking at the Metropolitan Opera. You know, yeah, it's going to be interesting.
I agree, Damien. With when it's going to be challenging, but streaming is here and it's been here. I think a lot of people are late to the party. So I think for artists, it's going to be important that you have streamable content. I think in this time, it's going to separate the good from the great. I think marketability, I think all of that is going to be extremely important. I think your presentations are now on social media platforms are going to have to step up altogether. You can't just do anything and look any kind of way and be crazy out here. I think marketing is going to be key. And I think shareable content. And I just think music that other people want to hear is going to separate those who get an audience. Because right now, it's really going to be about your audience and your reach.
Definitely. Well, the next thing I'd like to ask you all, what projects are you currently working on that you can speak on, or what projects are coming down the pipeline? What do you have coming up next, Stanley? You're always in the studio. You're always producing. You're always doing large events, television, international events. Gwen, same thing. You're always working. Now you've been previously before COVID-19, you were a writer. You can speak more on that, attending Broadway shows and doing reviews, and you've been writing, and I think you have something that just came out. I'll let you speak on it, dealing with writing. And people don't realize that you do a lot of work behind the scenes with television, in addition to working with your artists as a publicist. So either one of you can go first. What things are you working on now? What can we look to see from you in the near future?
Gwen?
Anyway, so I think I'm gonna, you know, downsize my music projects. Outside of working with you, Damien, and some of the projects, we have some tours that are coming up for 2021 and 2022, which I hope, which I'm fairly confident that they will probably go off very well, meaning, you know, the status of this virus. So I'm going to do that on the music side. I'm very interested in continuing my work with Broadway. I just relaunched a magazine, Global Communicator, which focuses on publicists, public relations professionals, communication professionals, marketing and advertising experts, as well as journalists and content creators. So I'm launching a magazine on Friday of this week. I'm really excited about that. That's a passion project for me. But one of the things I think that I'm most interested in, and I've been working towards, is doing some writing for television. That's going to be the next move for me, is to get in that space more. So I think that I'm a great storyteller. I think that I have some really great ideas. And that's what I'm looking forward to working on.
Awesome. Well, I'd like to open it up for questions. We have a lot of industry people. We have Vivian Scott Chu, who works right alongside her husband, Ray Chu. And I saw John Hart, a phenomenal artist. He actually introduced me to Twinkie Clark years ago when I was a student at Howard University, and he's worked with a lot of artists in the industry. One, namely, who we've all worked with, Yana Crawley, out of the DC area. And there's so many artists that are on that are watching. People are texting me. People are writing in. People are actually emailing while we're online. So I'm trying to juggle looking at all these posts and comments. But if we could have some questions from some of you that are watching on Facebook. Vivian is saying hello, Stanley, to all of us.
Hello, Vivian. Can I say something really quickly about Vivian and Ray? Because I got a write-up one time in the New York Times. It was my first and only write-up in the New York Times. But it happened because Ray Chu gave me an opportunity to perform in a band that he put together, and I think it was a tribute to gospel music, like maybe Thomas Dorsey, something like that. And he gave me an opportunity, and he spotlighted me. He gave me a spotlight. He gave me a moment to step out and to play an organ solo. And they wrote about it in the New York Times. But that was because Ray trusted me with the moment, and he gave me that opportunity. And most people don't give people those opportunities. And I never forgot that moment, and I'm so grateful forever. So Vivian, please tell Ray I said I love him and thank you for that opportunity because it changed my life.
Yeah, I actually just. Oh, what'd you say, Gwen?
I said Vivian and Ray Chu, yay!
I actually just. I was teaching a lesson to some of my students at Manhattan School of Music, so my graduate students, about music directors, and I was highlighting H.B. Barnum, who worked with the great Aretha Franklin and so many other artists. I talked about Ricky Minor, who I've had a chance to work with, who is a major mogul in the industry in Hollywood, LA. And then I also talked about Ray Chu, who for years was over Showtime at the Apollo. I think I said it correctly. Vivian, you can let me know if I'm saying correctly. He does an event every year at Carnegie Hall, which a lot of artists that I've worked with have been on that platform with them. But also, he's been the music director for Dancing with the Stars. I'm talking major things. And then Stanley, another interesting point. Ray Chu was the music director for Sunday Best, BET, season 1 and season 2. You were the music director for season 3 for Sunday Best on BET, and I was the music director for season 4. So I look up to both of you. You all have been doing it on a very high level here in New York City, and I'm just honored to be able to have followed in your footsteps in the path that you all have created. Yes. So Stanley, what do you have coming up? What things can you announce that you've been working on and that you have coming up soon? And you all can definitely type the questions in.
Okay, I'm currently working on a project with Rodney, an artist called Jack Ross. He's an amazing soul singer, kind of like a Marvin Gaye, Otis Redding kind of Sam Cooke guy. I'm really excited about that. It's just conscious, good soul music. So I'm happy about that. And then, Damien, I'm looking forward to breaking new artists because I just think it's just time for new voices, faces. But the reality is you just have to have somebody who's willing to put the work in too. Because these days, there's such a sense of entitlement. You get 10 people following you on Instagram and you feel like you arrived. You know what I mean? So if you can just find young people who are willing to put the work in, I think we could introduce a whole new demographic of genre of artists. If we can just find people who can just put the Instagram down for a minute and just put the headphones on and do the work.
Exactly. We do have a question for you, Stanley. Vivian Scott Chu would like to know, Stanley, what is the name again of the artist you're working with?
Jack Ross.
Jack Ross.
Jack Ross. He's signed to Island Records.
Awesome. So I have another question for you all. as we're starting to wrap it up, if you had the opportunity to speak with yourself at 21 years old, what things would you say to yourself? Gwen?
Well, I would say a lot. I would just say, you know, study your craft, really, really study your craft and educate yourself about the business and the craft. And oh God, I would, if I had a child 21, I would just, you know, work on them being more disciplined, because I think that's really, really important in this industry. I think out of all the industries that I worked in, Damien, from film and television to Broadway, I find that, and I don't want to offend anyone by saying this, but this is, you know, my experience, that the artist from the music industry has the least amount of discipline. I don't find that in any other industry like I find it in the record industry. So I would definitely tell them to be, you know, learn to be disciplined about their lives and their careers, and just to just all the basic things that your mom and dad tried to teach you when you were growing up. Be nice, be kind, be loving, you know, be loyal, be honest, you know, those things. Those things will, you know, take you a very, very long way. Yeah. So that's pretty much it for me.
Stanley, what would you say to the 21-year-old Stanley? What would you tell him now? Oh, you know.
First of all, I wish I could talk to 14-year-old Stanley. And I put attention to learn how to read music, and I didn't, because being in church for so long and playing, you develop such a keen ear that you can hear something and you can almost play it back immediately. So when I went to school, Damien, I didn't really pay attention to learning the notes and reading music. I just played by ear. And I never wanted to be a piano player. I wanted to be a bass player and a drummer. So because my church could never keep an organist, I was kind of forced to play organ. But I never wanted to play organ. I wanted to be a bass player and a drummer. But the reason why I say I regret not learning music, because I remember a time you gave me an opportunity to sit in with you at Lincoln Jazz Center with this orchestra, and everybody's reading this sheet music, but you gave me an opportunity to sit on an organ and play with this orchestra. So when they said, "Oh, okay, we're going to start at bar 39 or whatever," I'm like, "Damien, what's bar 39?" And you was like, "It's the bridge." I'm like, "Okay, it's the bridge." You go to the bridge. But the reason why I say that, because I've been blessed with good relationships. Damien is a professor. He's a conductor. Ray True does all the television shows in the world. Even if I wanted the opportunity, I couldn't go to a Ray and Damien and say, "Hey man, do you have any opportunities? Do you have a place for me? Could I sit in?" Because I wouldn't be able to do the work. So I regret. It's not about the opportunities and the things that I accomplished. It's about the opportunities that I missed because I wasn't prepared for those opportunities. So I would tell my younger self to take it a little bit more seriously and do that work and learn that music, because it's not about the things I accomplished. It's about the things that I missed in my life.
And something to that about Damien. Thanks for sharing that, Stanley. I think that was just really important to say. But Damien, you're like, for me, you're like, if I had to tell someone 14, 20 or whatever, give them some advice, give them some feedback, I would use you as an example. I would use you as an example in your career as an example. Because here's an artist that is a jazz artist on his own, a classical artist on his own, a gospel artist on his own. And I've never really worked with anyone like that before. And I think that one of the reasons why you're able to navigate all of that is because you studied for years. I mean, you started in the church like everyone else, but you studied. You studied, and you was, hanging out with Jesse Norman, friend of the family's, hanging out with her at that time, when you were growing up, and Aretha Franklin, Stevie Wonder, the Clark sisters. I mean, you trained basically with Twinkie Clark and the Clark sisters. They took you on the road, Dorinda and Karen, and I just think that more artists need to be a lot more diverse. So I really applaud you for that, because I think that's one of the reasons why we're still together, because I think what you do is so fascinating. I'm always like, oh my God, just the different journeys and paths that you were taking. I mean, you're, working with Wynton Marsalis one day, working with Aretha one day, working with this one and working with that one, and writing operas. You are a composer for real. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, and it's rare to have people in this industry that that can do all of that. Honestly, and I'm not trying to blow your head up, but I tell you that all the time. So I would, use you as a perfect example of what I would tell someone who is interested in getting in this business.
Wow. Thank you both. We have some very good questions that are coming in. Some of them I'll be able to post here, but some of them I just have to read them. So I'm going to read one of the first from one of my friends from high school. We went to school together at Davidson Fine Arts School in Augusta, Georgia. And I'd like to read his question. His name is Jermaine Brown. We played clarinet together in the wind ensemble, the orchestra, and that was 5th through 12th grade, many, many years ago. Okay, Jermaine Brown's question is this to you, Stanley and Gwen. As Black artists, how do you all feel about corporations, specifically related to the music and entertainment industry, now stepping into the fray to show their support for the Black Lives Matter movement? Do you think there's a genuine sea change in our society towards Blacks and the push for equality? Or are these companies just trying to be trendy and relevant due to the ubiquity of social media and the 24-hour news cycle? Very good, Jermaine. That's Jermaine there. Yeah, good question.
Stanley, I'll start if you like, but I just had a conversation with someone about that. And I think for the most part, I think people were really outraged about what happened with George Floyd. But on the other hand, anyone could put together a message. That's what I get paid to do. But is it sincere? Is it authentic? You have to give this time to see which corporations are real about this issue or not. And I think that, I just think that, it's a wait and see thing. It's a wait and see thing. I think some of these corporations, they're coming out with messaging right now, but then they turn around and they vote for, they're giving all their money to Trump. You know what I mean? So I'm not really sold on all of these corporations and their messaging right now. I'm really not. I'm in a wait and see mode to see what they're doing. And that's the position that I have on it right now, to be honest. Because working in PR and marketing, I know how they sit around the table. But if they're serious about changing things, they have to bring everybody to the table. And I'm not necessarily seeing that with everyone. They just want to get the message out. And you know what, Damien, at the end of the day, it's about business. This is not good for business for these people. It's just not good for business. So they're concerned about losing revenue, and the NFL is all, you see what the NFL is doing right now, right? So and that it's like what, 95% of Black players in the NFL. Like, what are they going to do? Like, I mean, you expect for them to come back with the whole messaging thing that they did. But last year, they was giving everybody a hard time. So I don't know. It's a wait and see thing for me. It really is. It's about money, and that's what they're concerned about. They're very concerned about the money.
Yeah, I agree with her. I agree totally. I think right now it's just not about what people say, it's about what they do. And I think we have to watch, and we have to wait, and we have to see what happens, because everybody's feeling guilty and everybody's using this as a marketing opportunity as well. But it's like Gwen said, you can't say you're with us and then you're financially supporting people that are against us.
Very well stated. One more question from someone that reached out that we don't see here, and that is Gary Stewart Jr., phenomenal organist, musician, arranger. He and his brother are musicians. They have a lot of great projects coming out. He's a student at Morgan State University. His question to you, Stanley and Gwen, is this: does having a music degree really make a difference in the music industry?
I think it makes a difference if you are an artist, a musician, because I think that the artists and the musicians that are working are going to be the ones that go to school and know how to write and compose and read music. They're the ones that are going to have longevity on their side. But in terms of other areas of the business, I don't think necessarily so. I don't think you have to have a music degree. Any good degree will do, probably. I mean, yeah, I wouldn't necessarily tell someone to go to college. I wouldn't necessarily tell someone if they wanted to be in the marketing or PR area of the business to go to school. I think you can go to school for that, but I don't think it's necessary. I didn't go to school for that. So, yeah, but definitely for artists, musicians and artists, I think it's necessary. I think it's very necessary. Stanley?
Yes, I think it's necessary, especially in some genres, in particular genres of music. For me in particular, I never went to college. I never obtained a degree in anything. But I've always found myself having the type of jobs that put me in position to hire those kids who went to Berkeley and Yale and all these other prestigious universities, right? But for me, like I said earlier, it probably would have put me at higher levels and given me greater opportunities if I had obtained those degrees and those opportunities and opportunities of higher learning. But it doesn't work out for everybody, and some people don't have that type of favor, if I might use that word, on part of their lives. But I've been blessed to have executive positions my entire career. But with saying that, you had to be the first one in the building and the last one to leave. You wasn't going to outwork me, because I knew at the end of the day, I didn't have that. I didn't have that luxury. So I had to be fast. I had to be sharper. I had to have the most incredible work ethic in order to prove myself all the time. So in industries like R&B, a lot of times you don't have to have a degree. Like when you look at Damien, as you know, we put bands together all the time, and it doesn't require a degree. It just requires you having a good ear and being able to retain music. So in some instances, in some fields, like Gwen said, yeah, you're not going to sit at, you're not going to jazz at Lincoln Center. You're not sitting with Wynton on a long stretch if you don't you don't the paperwork,
right,
which is needed.
But you know what? Let me backtrack something about this. I do think it is important, though, for anyone who wants to be in this industry, if they can, to get a college degree, because most of the African-American executives in this industry, they were pretty much moved out of the industry in their 40s. And when I look around to some of the white colleagues in our industry, they still have the same people that I worked with at Arista and Allen and Gap. They still have jobs. And I think sometimes that when you're in the record industry, you think it's going to last forever, and some people don't know how to transition into another field. So I would say that if you're going into the record music industry, that be prepared to move into another industry, because a lot of people think that executives from the music industry skills are not transferable.
Right.
A lot of people think that people who work in the record industry, the record companies, they feel like that's quote unquote the ghetto of the entertainment industry. They do. I've heard that. I've heard, headhunters say, oh yeah, well, you had a very stellar career, but I don't know how it's going to work in corporate. I don't know how you're going to do over at the film company. So that's the perception. I'm not saying it's the truth, but I do think that, we should definitely look at that and be prepared to move forward in another career after a certain age.
Absolutely.
I mean, I'm still in the industry because I chose to be in the industry. And I started my company in 2002. And I had never thought I never wanted to start a company. I was comfortable going into a company every day, turning on the light switch, doing my job, having a big expense account, making six figures. I was very, very happy with that. Right. And then when I had to get my own company, I was like, oh my God. But I felt like, that was going to be it for me. There was a ceiling. There was for Black executives. I definitely believe that. So I like to backtrack and say, be prepared to do something else when you get in your 40s, because that industry may not be around for you at a certain age.
Absolutely. And for me, I was able to transition into buying, owning studios and doing things like that and producing. So when I was no longer in the building, the work never stopped, but I was always a reader. So I always understood my history. If I was going to go work for somebody, I was going to know everything about that company. I was going to know everything about that genre. I was going to study. For those who don't have those opportunities to go to college, it doesn't mean you can't go to Barnes and Nobles, you know what I mean, and get you some books and study the history of music and understand what cross collateralization is, what is publishing, what is royalties, like understand the game that you're trying to be in, because you didn't go get a degree. It doesn't mean you can't go sit down and read a book or ask some questions.
Most definitely. That's very important, Gwen. Yes.
And now, I mean, this, Damien, they have all these free online courses that are free for college students. I mean, it's no reason. You can't even say anymore that I don't have the money to go to college. You can go for free with all these online courses. It's a ton of them out there. So.
Yes.
I see so many phenomenal people in the industry on. Also, another one of my big brothers, he was one of the reasons why I decided to actually go to Howard University, because his name was like ringing all over the country. I was in California. That's Raymond Angry, who has played for Yolanda Adams, one of Yolanda's most phenomenal projects, live in DC. Woo! He was on organ, Only Way, all that stuff. Raymond Angry has worked with Lauryn Hill. I mean, I could go on and on. Played with Wynton Marsalis. He's classical. I looked up to him. He was at Howard. We had the same teacher. There are a lot of people that have been working a long time at what they're doing. But we have some really good questions here coming from some other musicians. So the next question, I'm going to put it on the screen, is from Greg Watkins, phenomenal pianist, singer, arranger, and producer. He says, what is your message to the many artists that have succumbed to discouragement and depression, knowing they won't have the chance to tour and perform live for a while? Who wants to speak to that first?
I think you should, because you are touring right now and things are rough right now for a lot of artists, and how rough that can be. But of course, you're a professor at the Manhattan School of Music, so you sort of have that to fall back on. But I think you should probably speak to that. And Stanley,
Well, yeah. I can speak to that one thing. My pastor, my spiritual mom, Bishop Iona Locke, told me something years ago. She said, one thing you'll notice, and Stanley and I have had this conversation, wealthy people have multiple streams of income. And she told me that, and it stuck with me. So for me, whenever things dry up, I turn to another stream. The good thing is that I finally listened to my mother, even though she is no longer here. She passed in 2015. My mother used to tell me the importance of saving money. And I'm grateful that I saved money. I finally got it together. and I started saving money. So when COVID-19 hit and the gigs weren't coming in, the calls weren't coming in, I had money saved up for 3 to 4 months, with no problem. So I wasn't affected. Now we're going 90 days, 3 months in. So now, I said, okay, God, what am I supposed to do? For me, my faith is very important. And for me, the Lord always says to look within, or like he told Moses, what's in your hand. So I realized that I could provide some of this knowledge and some of these skills to other people. So one of my students, Levon, was on, she's out of Valdosta, Georgia. I have people that have signed up for the Damien Sneed Foundation Performing Arts Institute. And I know a lot of people have said, oh, he's starting all this stuff now during COVID-19. No, the Damien Sneed Foundation actually started maybe about 3 or 4 years ago. Then last year, after I started the foundation, then last year I had an actual institute at the Jesse Norman School of the Arts. Now I just decided to bring it online. That's one thing I'm doing. Collaborative events. Stanley and I were just talking about a collaboration. I always am able to look at certain irons that are in the fire, or finding something else that's within, or a project that I have on the shelf, so to speak, that I haven't worked on, to keep myself busy. So Greg, that sort of answers the question. Because I'll be honest, I started getting very discouraged and disenchanted when I was sequestered at home and sheltered in place, locked down due to COVID-19. This is New York City. You're able to travel and go as you please. But for me, when I started realizing, oh, I have this project, I have this I can work on, becoming busy with things that were inside of me and developing those gifts and talents in a different way. Now I love being locked in. I don't know if I want to go back to having to see people all the time and do all that. I'm enjoying being at home alone. So that's one thing. Stanley, what do you say to that?
I think it's a great opportunity when you look at artists who are not traveling. Let's just talk about the comparison with pastors who don't have their audiences every Sunday. And now we're all forced to sit in front of our computers or with a small group of people and stream. Because you don't have the capacity or the ability to tour, I think you still can reach your audience and put out content and do shows and do, have nights on Friday night where you're going to do a 30-minute set for your audience. Keep your people engaged. Have them, and because the reality is, it's not people will buy. If people are not buying you, they won't buy what you're selling. So if they're dedicated and committed to you, they will support you, whether you're at the arena or whether you just in a house in this green screen, doing what you do. But continue to put out music and put out content, and just send out messages and speak to the times that we in. Try to write something that's going to inspire and uplift, because in inspiring and uplifting other people, you will find yourself being inspired and uplifted.
Yes.
And because you were just talking about Ray Angry, Damien, and he's another example of, he's always working with this group, working with that group, producing for this group. He's with the Roots. He's out there sort of like you are, just out there. And I think that musicians are going to have to do that. I think the days are over when you go on tour with one artist and that's it. Those days are over. I think. And I think that you have to be able to move in and out of other genres and opportunities.
That's wonderful. You always segue us into the next question, Gwen. So the next question is coming from a friend of mine from Howard University. His name is Malik Starks. He is a professor, very brilliant genius at the prestigious Ivy League Brown University. Malik Starks graduated at Howard University with me. He says, any suggestions about outlets or networking avenues for a Brown University psychology professor, that's Malik Starks, who makes dope hip hop music?
He should give Michael Eric Dyson a call. And no, I say that because, they probably have a whole lot in common, and he probably could give him some direction on that. But I do think that they need more scholars in hip hop. I think they need more scholars in Black music, but I think they need more scholars in hip hop. So I don't want to divert from his question, but I do think maybe he should reach out to Michael Eric Dyson. I mean, seriously. I mean, yeah.
Stanley?
I would.
Yeah. Yep. And also put some of that music, you know, make sure your music is protected, of course, but put some of that music, do some snippets and put some of that music out here and tag some people, because you never know. You know, just tag some people who you think would fit your type of production, like a rapper who you think would really rock over your beat, and just kind of tag some people. Just say, hey man, you know, let me know your thoughts. You know, ask the question, and engage conversations, and use the internet to kind of get stuff out there, because believe it or not, people are listening.
Wow, you all are doing this so well. Each of you, your responses, Gwen and Stanley, you all lead us into the next question. And the next question, Stanley, is from a young guy that we both know, Damien Jones, phenomenal musician. He's also a fitness trainer. He says, what do you suggest a creative should do when they feel like there's no support for or of their music?
Well, I think too, I know him well, and he's a young upcoming producer, and this is what I say to young guys, right, who probably just starting in the game or just getting their feet wet. Nothing happens overnight. You have to put in time, and do the work, and just let the work. You know, how do you know someone your next door neighbor is barbecuing? Because you smell it, right? Mm-hmm. You know somebody's barbecuing because you smell it, right? When you're doing something and you're doing it well, somebody is going to know that you're cooking something. All right, put the time in and stop paying attention to the end result and enjoy the process of becoming great, because you're not going to become great overnight. And stop looking for affirmation all the time. Like, people need to be affirmed every day now. You don't have to affirm me. I love what I do. If you don't love what I do, that's your problem. But I love what I do, and somebody's going to love what I do if I'm giving it from my heart. And so I tell these young guys, just give and do what you're doing from your heart, and stop waiting for the world to embrace it immediately.
You know, I can speak about that myself. I had to stop waiting for people to embrace my gift or my brand. I was having a conversation with someone that we all know, about someone that we all know in the industry, and I felt bad because that artist, I think, missed their season. They missed 2 or 3 seasons that came to them in the cycle of time and life, because they kept waiting for someone who was bigger than them or had the big name to produce them and give them a platform, when in actuality they were already working with that person and they should have just produced the project themselves. That's one of the reasons why I recorded my first project and produced it myself and put it on my own label. I wasn't planning on having a label. Now my label has other artists on it, but a lot of the stuff I had to do it myself. Stanley, that's another thing too. I'm sure that's why you started your studio, because you didn't want to always have to go somewhere else, drive there, spend the money. Right. It's nothing wrong with supporting other people's work ethic, but you just started it yourself, because you have to sometimes create from within. And sometimes I think people miss it by waiting for somebody else to, give them the signal, go. Sometimes you just have to put your voice out there yourself, or find whatever ways you can propagate the sound of your music or your music yourself.
And you know what? Sometimes, Damien, I think that some people who say they want to do music, I think there's a large group of people who fantasize about music, fantasize about this industry. And I say that because, when you see shows on television like Empire and some of these other shows that come on, those stories about the record industry is like 20, 25 years ago, and I'm like, I think people, no, I really do. I think they fantasize about being in this industry, and that concerns me sometimes with people that want to be, because sometimes I meet people and I think people, they of course love the music, But at what level do you love it? Do you love it as a hobby, or do you just kind of want to do this? But do you think you want to do it professionally and be the next Whitney Houston or something like that? And I think that I think sometimes people are a little confused about that. And I think that they have to really dig deep and do some soul searching on that, because everyone that wants to be a recording artist, it's not going to happen for everyone. So I think you have to figure out, if you want to really be in this industry on the creative side, you got to really figure out what you're going to do and how you're going to do it. And you have to be happy with that, and you have to live with that, and you have to accept that. Because I can't tell you how many artists I work with over the years that, they made 1 or 2 records and you don't hear from them anymore. So.
Because it doesn't happen for everybody, but it doesn't mean that they're not great. Because Gwen, now me and you have this in common, and you can speak to this, because we work with artists who were phenomenal, but it's just the timing was wrong and it didn't work out. Like, for instance, let's take a Myron Davis. Back in the days, you know what I'm saying? Myron was a Stevie Wonder, Donny Hathaway, D'Angelo type of guy, but it just was the wrong time. And to me, to this day, he's still probably my favorite artist. But the world might not know who he is, but it doesn't mean he's not great. It just means he didn't get those opportunities that other people happen. So what Gwen is saying is right. It might not happen for everybody, but it doesn't mean you're not great.
Right. And I think people need to come to terms with that. I think they really do.
So the next question is from Philip Harris. He is a singer, a baritone, and an educator, an arts educator. He says, how do you navigate the music industry when you're just getting started? Is it important to be very well versed in one area, or to have a multifaceted career that covers many topics? Are many people looking to label those who have many talents, like a Damien Sneed? Any responses?
I don't know. I think, I don't know. You, Stanley, you go on this one. That was a handful. See, that's part of the problem. It's like, there's one Damien Sneed, like there's one Quincy Jones. I think that, when you say navigate, I mean, I don't know. That's always a tough question for me, because I just feel like, if you're really passionate about being in this industry, that you're going to continue to do it, and you're not going to give up, and you're going to keep going. But at the same time, the industry is just so different right now. It's just really different. And it's not like how it was when Stanley and I got in. It was really a lot about artist development, about developing artists, building artists right now. Now you have to have so many streams to even be in the game. What about artists that need to have successful radio hits? Like 10 years from now, when you want to do a tour and you can't get a tour because no one heard your record on radio. What are you going to do? That's how artists like the Earth, Wind & Fires and all the rock bands and all of them are able to tour 20 years after they recorded, is because they have hit records. So if you are not, if you're not going to have a record that's a radio hit, like, where do you fall 10 years from now? So that's why I know the streaming thing is all about sales, and it's really about the record companies making their money, but what really does it do for the artists? And then when they stream, they only getting pennies on the dollar. So I have a hard time with that, because the industry is just so different. And Damien, I'm so glad that you are, looking to have a career in classical, you're composing music and stuff like that, because I think that you have to be prepared to do other things. I just really do. It's just, things are not the way they used to be 20 years ago. And how are you gonna have your success? That's very difficult now, I think, more so than it was 15 or 20 years ago. I mean, what do you think, Stanley?
I think you're right. I think it's definitely harder from what it was when we were doing it. Gwen, and from what it is now, it's totally different. There's hardly no A&Rs. There's hardly no artist development. I mean, you could find someone singing at Sylvia's, and then next day you had them in the office Monday morning in a conference room with the whole staff because you believed in that person's talent. What'd you say? and then we made it happen, but you don't have that now. And with the streams, it's harder. But for me, still, I think, like, I never went to school for college. Well, I went to high school and graduated, but I never went to college to get a degree, right, in economics. But I understood math, right? My thing is, if you're a singer, let's take the gospel industry genre for a minute, and you're a praise and worship leader at a church, and you're seeing 10,000 people every weekend, right? Now, if you stream, you have to sell 1,500. You have to have like 1,500 streams that account as that equate to the sale of one CD, right? 1,500 sales. But if I'm a worship leader at a church and people are buying into me, if I sold 1,000 CDs at $10 a piece, that's $10,000. Why would I care about a stream if I have an audience every weekend that I could sell to?
And that's just 1,000 CDs, right? It's 10,000
CDs, Gwen. They have 52 weekends out of a year to sell products.
No, but see, that's what I mean about people fantasize about that, because that's some very basic math that makes sense. But you know, most artists, they don't want to be known just in their church. They want to be known. They don't even want to be known regional. They want to be known nationally. And see, that's what I mean. And maybe I didn't explain it well enough, but that's what I mean about people fantasize about this industry. Because you're right. There's nothing wrong with being a worship leader and being able to have that audience and people buy your records, you know, but that's not enough for most people. They don't want that. They want to be on Sunday best. They want to be on television. They want to go to every church around the country. So, yeah.
Right.
But see, that's what they need to understand. I don't think there's enough people breaking it down to them like that. I don't think people really understand like how the industry is today. It's different.
And
20 years ago.
Yeah, I would want to manage a person who had that opportunity, because my thing is, if we have 52 weekends of a year to actually move product, if I'm going to move 10,000 units in that year, because I have 52 weeks to convince you that you need to buy this record, right? Then I might take some of that money, that capital, and I might go to a tour manager and I might say, hey, could I buy a part of this tour? Can I put up 50 grand and maybe I can do 10 cities? Or I would negotiate. Like, people are not understanding how to barter or how to negotiate and how to invest in your own self, as opposed, like you said, Gwen, everybody's waiting for Clive Davis to call them and change life and make you the next Whitney Houston. It's not going to happen. These days, you have to invest in yourself.
You have to invest in yourself. Yeah. Wow. That was excellent. We have a question from Kiran Stevens. What are some first steps you would recommend for a new independent artist about to release their first single? And what are some steps they can do to release the music? Well, first of all, I think that you need to have social media presence. You should have a SoundCloud page. You should have Instagram. Your Instagram name should not be 41207 _ XX11232. John went to the store. The pig saw the kite. You know, you could brand yourself. This is one of the things that my publicist Gwendolyn Quinn had to share with me. My Twitter account is Damien Sneed. My Instagram is Damien Sneed. My Facebook page is Damien Sneed. Winton says it this way: what is your point of entry? An artist should have a clear point of entry so people can clearly see what your product is. And then if you're going to release a single, you got to know who your audience is. What is the type of music? Study your audience, your demographic. If it's gospel, if it's R&B, if it's hip hop, if it's rap, if it's classical, look and see what other people are doing in your field. Not that you want to copy them, but to be knowledgeable about those that are working in your field. Ask questions, and definitely do not release a single just to have a flyer made by a graphic designer, and you're going to release your single and post a flyer on Facebook and Instagram and say, we got a single, y'all. That does nothing. If you don't have promotional events set up, you can, if it's gospel, you can talk to a church. They may be having a conference. They would be glad to have an artist come, maybe do praise and worship, maybe do the sermonic, maybe do a youth concert. There are things that you can do to promote your music. Promotionally means you don't have to charge them. It's like promotion. If you're on a record label, the record label will have you do so many promotional dates that you don't get paid for. On top of that, you need to know what you can say, because even if you get on radio, a lot of people mess up because they get the radio play, and then when the radio announcer interviews them, they can't even say a complete sentence. They can't say, well, why did you write the song? I'm not talking about if you have a speech impediment. I had a speech impediment. You can take classes in speech pathology, but why are you singing that song? What is your message? What do you stand for as an artist? Those are the things you have to have figured out. And if you don't have those figured out, you should have a team of people that can help you. Another thing with your music, do not release music if it's not mixed properly and if it's not mastered. I've been in studio radio stations where they can't play the music. The artist sounds great, but the quality of the project is so low. We hear people in the back chewing popcorn and smacking gum in the mic because the microphone that you had, you didn't even have I was looking for mine because it's here in the room where I am. You didn't even have the appropriate materials to record. And it's okay. We all begin to grow, but people can help you. You can ask questions. You don't always have to pay $500 an hour for a studio, but you have to have the correct mix and master. It's so important. It's so important. You need tracks. You need TV tracks. Your band may not be able to travel with you. And then you got to think about the music. Is it so difficult that people won't be able to play it or sing your stuff again? And then on top of that, you need somebody to tell you how you should look for a photograph. Nobody wants a blurry image, or you taking a picture on the CD cover and you have ketchup here from the hot dog that you boiled on the stove, and then you got some grits and eggs over here. No, y'all are laughing when people do that. We all eat food, but you can't be an artist and release a CD and then you've got stuff in your teeth, and that's why they have dentists and they have toothbrushes, and people think this is harsh, but all these things go into what you need to make sure. You have to have the whole package, because now everybody's an artist. Everybody's releasing a single. Everybody's got one out. You look on Facebook, you just scroll and everybody's doing something. So you really need to study it. And I probably said too much, but Gwen or Stanley, do y'all want to piggyback on that?
No, I Stanley got that, but I can't keep up with all the independent artists out there right now. It's just a lot. It's just a lot.
Definitely.
It's a lot. It's a lot of people who are going for the same thing. But at the end of the day, I just think the great will stand out. And you can't just be good. You can't be average. You have to be great. You just have to give it your best. Be your best.
And you also have to be really called to this industry. You have to have a strong community, strong people in your corner, but you have to be able to handle rejection and not fall on the floor. You have to really be called to the music industry if you're going to navigate it, because if you're navigating on the sea as a captain of a ship, you're going to encounter storms. But in this industry, Stanley will tell you, Gwen will tell you, I will tell you, we didn't always just show up and we had everything together. There were people that said no. They said, this isn't ready. I don't like this. And it may hurt, especially when you're creative or a savant. There are things that you create and it's your baby. You want people to like it, but you have to not wear your feelings on your shoulders, and you have to allow somebody else to be able to tell you something, because some people just don't want to listen. They know it all. This is it, and I've got this and that's it. So you have to be teachable. Well, we've been on for a long time, and I want to thank you both so very much. Before we end, I would like to talk about the next episode that's coming, and I'm going to bring you all right back on, and we're going to say goodbye to you, Stanley and Gwen. But before we do that, I'm super excited about the next episode, which is going to be with two of my friends. And that episode is episode 4, The Harlem Renaissance, the writers in music and literature. Dr. Tammy Kernodle, who's a professor at Miami University. She is currently the president of the Society for American Music. And also we have Dr. Von Raspberry, a good friend of mine from Howard University. He's a professor at Stanford University in English and African American Studies. He's an author for the Harvard University Press, and he's a graduate of Howard University. And we're going to be talking about the fact that we are now in this year in the centennial of the Harlem Renaissance, and talk about people like Langston Hughes and Zora Neale Hurston and Duke Ellington and William Grant Still and Nathaniel Dett. So next week is going to be good. We're coming a different direction, so to speak. So Stanley and Gwen, I brought you all back on, and I'd love if you all could tell all the viewers how they can reach you on social media. Maybe some people have some questions. They want to hire you all to produce their album, or they want you to take them to Clive Davis, so they want you to be their publicist. So Stanley, how can people reach you? You have a phone number?
You can reach me on Instagram. You can reach me on Instagram. I'm Stanley A. Brown. Everything. Instagram, Twitter, www.stanleybrown.com. I mean, it's easy. You can find me easily.
Yes, and you
Well,
can.
I prefer email. It's my full name, Gwendolyn Quinn. I still have my AOL address, Gwendolyn Quinn at AOL. If you expect a response back, it's best to email me. That's the best way to get in contact with me. Gwendolyn Quinn at AOL.com.
Well, again, I want to thank you both, and I'm sure all the listeners are extremely blessed and fortunate to have heard all of this knowledge, to have two major moguls in the industry, people who have multiple streams of income. You know, usually for something like this, people would have to pay $1,000 just to sit and hear this kind of information. So I'm grateful for both of you. You all are phenomenal individuals, phenomenal human beings. And thank you all very, very much. I know our listeners enjoyed it, and I look forward to seeing everybody next week, same time at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for the next episode. Thank you all.
Thank you, guys.
Nice talking with you.